Thank you for staying with us. The first conversation on the program this morning is affordable housing for Nigerians. Housing is one of the major needs of every man, and housing deficit in Nigeria is a major problem despite efforts by government and the private sector. So this problem are there, and of course quite a number of Nigerians are still struggling to be able to afford housing. So what are the things that we need to do on the long-term basis, on the short-term basis, to actually address this problem of housing facing Nigerians? We have in the studio with us somebody who is very passionate about housing. Dr. Moses Ogunleye is the Managing Director, MOA Planners Limited, is equally a professional town planner. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right. So how alarming and serious are the figures of housing deficit in Nigeria? And do we have accurate data to actually speak to this problem of housing?
Okay. Let me start from the second part of the statement.
Data.
The data cannot be reliable. The data that we have, we can't rely on the data. But what is clear is that there is a deficit, and you need those data to be reliable so that you can plan to arrest those deficits. Why did I say the data? You can't rely on the data. Is that for a data to be reliable, you must first of all trust the source of that data. Where is the data coming from? Who is gathering the information that now translate to data? Then how efficient is the process of data collection? Then you look at all the components of the data that you need to now conclude and analyze to say you have a deficit. But more importantly is to accept the fact that we have a deficit. And globally, no country is able to do 100. In other words, if you have 100 citizens, you are able to provide, not minding how that provision is made, you are able to provide for the 100. No country. Yeah, you could have 98.2, you could have 97.2, and you could have 50-50. Maybe you have deficits as high as 50. So, well, we have a deficit. That's a point I wanted to reiterate. We've been saying that on several occasions. Yeah.
Okay, so what are the major factors driving this housing deficit in Nigeria now?
Well, the easier one is, first of all, accept that supply is less than demand. Demand is continuously on the increase. And the reason for that is that the population is increasing. Those who require those accommodations, you will get more. People's life status change. By the time you are under your parents, you are housed, you are part of that household. By the time you are 18 or you are at work, you started to work, then you can now form your own household. So there's a lot of gap, and if you don't block the gap, it continues to increase. So population is a key factor. Then the challenge of urbanization, that is where is the demand coming from. Okay. I mean, in Lagos, we know the thick population. You can't compare the demand in Lagos for housing with demand in other cities of Nigeria and even some other small communities. So because there is so much population in Lagos, there is work to be done. There is much of migration. The cities are expanding. And virtually all the major cities have what you can see as considerable gap in the deficit. So unless we don't want our population to increase. However, even if population is stable, it's not increasing, those units that we have will depreciate in value. And that is why you also need to rebuild, renovate. You can't have a property 10 years or 30 years. You won't spend money to improve on those properties. So there is, but more importantly, in 40 years ago, we say that it's still the same. In the cities, you have more of the housing challenge is more quantitative. More people, less production, less supply. In the rural area, it's more of quantity, less people. Quality, less people. The qualities are not too good, but you have minimum standard for those accommodations.
Okay. You talked about gaps, sorry, Chibola, you talked about gaps earlier. Let's talk about policy and then income level gaps now. These are major factors.
Yeah, I agree with you. Somebody just about 25 in one of the countries in the Eastern world studying pharmacy, and already at the 6th year, combined, he was telling me that maybe in the next year I'm going to get accommodation and I want it to be close to my dad. Already there's a system that will provide that guarantees him accommodation. 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and it's a good location. You don't bother too much. You only pay the structure, you pay your mortgage, they give you for 10 years, you could see even for 20 years, 25 years, you still paying. It's less than 30. So if you don't have that kind of structure, more people will be
homeless.
I don't want to use the word homeless. More people will not be sheltered. You're right. More people will be homeless, or there will be congestion. If you know your work can't sustain an accommodation, you share. Or you live in a far location where accommodation is cheaper, but ultimately you spend more money to travel to your workplace. And in Lagos, where are the work? We know the commercial area, we know the city center. I mean, Ikeja is very key, another work area. So what is the cost of commuting from where people live? And that's why people come from Ogun State, en masse, to come to Ikeja area, another part of Lagos, to come and work. So, the system was guaranteeing me that I will have accommodation. And the system must also connect me with my work. If there is a train that I know by 7 o'clock, by 9:30, by 8 o'clock, I'm in my workplace, because there is a public transport that will move me, then I feel good. I won't mind to live
Anywhere.
But if my status, my salary increase, or my income increases, I can now be saying, let me live around the city center. Those are the challenges that people face. All over the world, people who are not rich will not mind to live far from the city center. They now use public transport to support their economy, their system.
So efficient transportation system is key to addressing the problem of housing. That is one. For a country like Nigeria, without an accurate figure of our population, how serious are we about solving the problem of housing? Because we don't even know the number of Nigerians that we have. I cannot remember the last time that we had census in the country. So if you don't know the population of your country, how then can you plan strategically to address the problem of housing?
If you don't remember, I remember. The last census was in 2006. How many years? 11 years? 2006, yeah. 11 years. Okay, so how can you rely on data of 2006 to plan for in 2025? In 2025. No, that's
At more than 11.
That's okay. 11 plus 10. That's 21 years ago. so those are challenges. But what is the structure on ground to provide those accommodations? I'm sure you know that over 90% of the housing that we have is by the private sector, and that private sector include corporate bodies and individuals. The landlord, the one we call landlord. Government has just less than 10%. If you think Lagos government is building so much, what you should do is to calculate all that Lagos government has done since even pre-LSDPC. Pre-LSDPC was 1972. Pre-LSDPC, added to what they've done up to now, Minister of Housing, LSDPC, is still less than 10% of where we live in Lagos. And that's what happened in some other part of Nigeria. But the real issue is, what is the structure on ground? If government is providing, how efficient is the system that will assist private sector to also provide? Those who are providing the housing sector, in the private sector, what are the incentives for me to build? If I want to build to sell. Then because private sector is profit driven, so that is where government now comes in, the one we call social housing. It's only government that can build and say, okay, I'm probably at little or no, I don't want to say no revenue. Maybe 10% of, if private sector is selling for X amount, the government is selling far low than that amount. After all, the fund I will use is public fund. And if you are building for what we say overriding public interest, the public should benefit more. If you are a limited liability company, you can understand. It's big grammar to say why should a limited liability company, for instance, should make considerable money. But as Federal Mortgage Bank, the Federal Housing that allow you a system, I'll get the right name, where you pay 2.5% of your...
Federal Mortgage Bank. Is it effective?
Federal
is it impacting?
National Housing Fund. I think Lagos staff still pay. Was to intervene when there was a big issue between Federal Mortgage Bank and Lagos State government. Said no, we are not getting a benefit. We will stop. I think that was during former Governor Fashola. I did some work. So I think if you are paying, you should notice this for your salary.
Yeah,
So if you pay 2.5, you pay.
Let's leave that side.
Yes, let's leave it. We are paid, but let's leave it.
You are supposed to be able to access what you have paid, and something on top of that. Let me use it that way, for you to build if you have a land, or repair what you have to improve the standard. That is a system. But beyond that, are there other systems in state level that allow you to, I know Lagos has a rent to own. How much of that do we have? How many people have benefited from that? Then if you are not in the paid employment, for instance, a government employment, if you are a private sector person, or the one we call the informal sector, a canteen operator, for instance, and a hairdresser, for instance, a kabu driver, what is the provision for you? Because elsewhere, everybody is captured. They know where you live now. They just click, just give them your security number, they pin. But if I'm operating a mortgage system, I can't capture you. Your work is not stable. That's a big factor. Your salary is not stable. I can't say this is what you earn per month. I can't guarantee your salary. Then in the banking system, they told us, what are you bringing to the table? What collateral? Because your salary is a collateral. So I know that every month something is taken away from that salary to a point. Then in 10 years, in 20 years, you will have paid. Where I mentioned another country, if you are buying for the first time, they give you what looks like 10%. If the property is 40 million, or let me say 20 million, the government will give you, in a way, what looks like 10%, and they call it a first home owner support. First time you are buying, we'll give you 10%, you look for 90%, whether through your mortgage or some other system. So
that makes it easier for people.
Salary is not
in other climes.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think is wrong with some of the mortgage systems that we have in Nigeria that is not really addressing the problem of housing deficit?
The earnings cannot support it. I mean,
so it's not realistic.
Well, until you have a good source, it may be easier for somebody who earns very well and work in a bank or work in an oil and gas sector, who earns, you don't even measure any figure, who has something considerably. I mean, his company will guarantee him, and then immediately his salary is paid, something is deducted. However, I think in all the system too, they expect you to have a deposit. And even that's what the National Housing Trust Fund says. You must have a percentage, I think it's a quarter or 30%. If they are selling the property for you for 20 million, let me use 20 million again, you're supposed to be able to provide the initial 25%. 25 or 30, 25%, which is, what is 25% of 30 million? Divided to 20 million, that's 5 million. So you look for 5 million. So as a public sector or a civil servant, are you able to raise 5 million? If you do cooperatives, will cooperative society give you 5 million? Then Federal Mortgage Bank will now give you, plus what you have, a loan maybe of 10 million to have 15 million. If you bring 15 million, if I'm a developer, I'll still take 15 million. Because I know that, I mean, if you, out of 20 million, you pay 15 million. The remaining 5 million will not be a big deal for you to pay. So our earnings are not strong enough, I mean, for us to be able to take mortgage.
So now it is very clear that many Nigerians cannot access mortgage in this country. So what are the alternative financial structures that we can actually use to ensure that Nigerians get the benefit of mortgage? An average civil servant, a trader, what can we do differently to ensure that they have access to mortgage?
Okay, I've said mortgage could be difficult because of our system.
So what's the alternative?
government is doing, and they should do more. There's a housing policy of 1991 that says housing for all by year 2000. I'm sure you remember that. There's been another policy of 2010, and there's been another one, housing policy. Now, that's the initial one of 30-something years ago says government has no business in direct construction. Government should leave construction of homes or residential apartments for private sector. There was a thinking through that government cannot leave it, 100%. That government should just set policy. Now later, the policy says that's a national policy. The government should build certain percentage to drive it in a way. You can't say private sector alone. Now, let that be increased. Let government contribution be increased vis-a-vis, that's what I mentioned, social housing. In Lagos, you have Lagos homes, you have many, millennium housing. Let that be increased. Again, let what we call site and services be also increased. Now, you remember, how did Lekki Scheme 1 get developed? How did Omole Phase 1 and Magodo get developed? Government did a scheme, provided roads, provided services, they now allocate. And I know there are so many schemes. There is the Agency of Government, New Towns Development Authority. Let's have more of those schemes. Let the services provide, so that you don't even buy land. You are the one that will be taking care of the roads. You are the one that will be taking care of the power supply system. You will now be asked to come and pay for poles. No. Let's have those infrastructure. Indeed, studies show that when you build, infrastructure will take 55-60% of the cost. Because if you have a house and there is no power supply, no water connection, then it's not housing. It's just something to keep your head. So let's have more of that. Site and services scheme. The government will be the one that will allocate. One of us that will be allocated. Then you build at your pace. That one, it could be savings from your salary, and that's what people do now. It could be something from your cooperative society. I'm mentioning cooperative again, and it could be your gift from family or friends. So you do it. We call them on-site developer at your pace. You do foundation, you wait a bit, you have more money, you do the superstructure, those are the walls, you have more money, you wait a bit, you do elsewhere. I'm sure virtually many people, everybody has bricklayer, you have plumber, you have iron bender. You're not supposed to have your own bricklayer. You could have one if you needed to just do some amendment or maintenance in your home. You could have a plumber if you need. There could be fault in the power, in the water supply system. You just call somebody. But you necessarily don't need to have one bricklayer who is your friend for 20 years or 10 years because you need to build your own home, your own house. Our system is still weak. If people say they are developers, and I challenge the developers, not because they don't want to do. We don't have a developer in Nigeria that can do 2,000 per annum. Nobody.
1,000 units.
Yeah, 2,000 is much. And there's where people will do 5,000 because they have a system. You first of all provide infrastructure. For 1 year, you are doing the roads, you are doing the gas line, you are doing the power line. And this next 6 months, you just see the structure growing up. And it looks beautiful because it's the same, almost typical, the model that they are putting up. And you begin to allocate in phases. So somebody will move in, the next phase will move in the next 3 months. So I reiterate, site and services, and then the other issue of you developing in phases. The national housing policy gives a role for local government, and that's the one you may refer to as the council flats in other part of the world. Government can also do, I hope they can manage that, manage what they are doing for staff in states like Lagos, where you have staff quarters. Because it's also a percentage, it's also considered. More of that can happen. Abroad, you don't need to be a staff of government to benefit from council flats. You don't need to be a staff. And most of them are in the city center. So as I say again, it's easier for you to go to your work. One line of train, one line of tunnel.
Okay, I'm more concerned about the affordability of these housing units. We have seen governors commission housing unit and they target affordable housing unit, but when you hear the the price of a unit,
Yeah.
you will be looking at yourself that are these housing units really meant for Nigerians because of the unit attached to it?
No, because of the price.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
Maybe it's still the same thing about our earnings. You know, I remember very well, I know what I was doing then. MKO Garden in 1996 or 95, 96. LSBC says 3-bedroom is 3.5 million.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, please just hold on. That same MKO Gardens. I know somebody who wants to rent a flat, 2-bedroom flat there, and they called it 6 million naira.
I'm telling you, I was a reporter then on housing, and the duplex was 5.2, 5.5. And the public, so much noise. What is the problem? How can I buy a house? 3.5 million was big money in 1996, very big money. So that was when you have former Governor Maroa. So some amendments was done, and then they reduced it by 100,000. And the public, 100,000. So you have, instead of 5.3, you have 5.2. If our earnings are better, those costs will not be high. People cannot be taking away 200,000, 50,000 per month, multiplied by 12, it's still less than 5 million. What do you want to pay? And the global standard or thought of World Bank is that your expenditure for housing, if you are in a household, and a household is a family. But if you are also a bachelor or a spinster, you could be one man household. So your earnings should not be more than 30%. Sorry, your expenditure on housing should not be more than 30% of your salary per annum. So, and that includes rent, value of rent, water supply, what you pay for the discos, your power supply. Indeed, because almost every community is supporting itself with security services, put the cost of what you pay, do a variation monthly. So you have all those components. And I mentioned energy. If you are paying for disco in Nigeria, the cost of your gas is also part of those costs. So if it's more than 30% of your earning, then you are living where, that's the belief, you are living where you're supposed to live. That means you have to look for other options of raising funds to support your earnings. And a lot of Nigerians are living, they're spending more than 30% of their earnings on housing. And that's dangerous. It means you have to squeeze yourself. And I know people, when they want to pay their rent, you just mentioned 6.5 million.
Yes.
I know what people go through.
MKO Gardens.
I know what people go through. Because the location is prime, wherever you want to be. So if our earnings goes up, and somebody said, and it's in the Constitution, the government must provide, there's a word they use, like saying shelter. It's the duty of government to provide shelter for us. And I mentioned earlier, what is local government doing? What is state doing? I'm aware, and I see it as a dream, that the federal government, through Federal Ministry of Housing, is doing Renew Hope. And I was talking to a local government chairman 2 weeks ago. He told me that they have provided, outside Lagos, I want to provide 50 hectares. We are waiting for federal government to come and build. I'm hoping, imagine if they build 100 units in 776 local government. And that will also be part of what federal government intervention will have.
Okay. Let's talk about urban planning. We've talked about data. Let's move to urban planning and how it can help, bridge these housing deficits.
Well, planning should say what is where, and whatever you do, you plan for. Just let me say three broad things. Summary: where people live, where they work, how near here, where we work, and because we must balance life, we also plan for where people recreate. I mean, that's totality of life. It can't be work. Yes, so exactly. Urban planning will say, this is the population of this community, this city. These are the housing area. And in housing, there should also be a place where, how close is this housing provision for it? Of urban planning will say, the next 10 or 20 years, the population here will be high. can we increase can we have what we call increase in density? If what we have is ground and forced, the one you call ground and forced, then we can now say in the next 10 years, we should increase the density of this place. If before we've been having 3-bedroom, 4 on a square meter of land, urban planning will say we need to have more of those units on this particular square meter of land because the population will have increased. Urban planning will say in the next 10 years, we should be developing this phase of our city. Let's keep this one, because if you are developing a place, you must be looking for where the water they will consume will come from, which school will the children attend, where would they recreate, where will be the healthcare facilities. That is a totality of life, because if you plan a community and you are not thinking about to make it habitable, I needed to travel 1 hour to get to the nearest facility. You have not planned very well, and then we are going to get to the hot season now, dry season now. I mean, we should have a place where I can walk 200 meters, even 100 meters. I'm able to recreate, sit at a park for 1 hour, I'm still relaxing. Sit at a park, sit there, take your lunch there, eat with your kids, go back home and feel good when you relax.
Okay, so now that brings us to the issue of slums. Every country, we all have slums in all parts of the world anyway, but in developing countries like Nigeria, we have more slums. So how can we, effectively tackle that using government policy, supporting developers? Because if you look at these developers, they are paying attention to the wealthy class, the wealthy people in society, while leaving behind people who are struggling, the low-income earners, and then it leads to slum. So how do we prevent that? How do we reduce the number of slums we have in a country like Nigeria that is still developing? And of course, we have poverty. We are still dealing with poverty.
Okay, don't let me take you to the argument of slum. Somebody said a slum is what those who live there call it. So some people don't want to live there. So, but you are right. A lot of countries are addressing the degeneration in their human settlement. And slum is the outcome of age and derelict. When that community becomes old, the building will be older, the facility will be older. And that is when we are building, we should also be concerned with renewing or regenerating, maintaining the one we have. Roads will be older, buildings will be older, sanitation facility will be older. What do we do? And interestingly, the slums have more population, and that's why you have congestion than the low income, like the high income, low density areas, because that's where people can afford to live. So they need more. They need more attention. They need more focus. They need more budgetary allocation. Smarter politicians will even focus slums. Because
that's
this
where the
population
is.
No, let me use the political word. This is where the votes come from.
Yes, exactly.
You balance it. Take care of the rich. Also take care of the poor. Most of them live in the slums. And then you have them in a mix. Technically, we say there is what they call blight. Blight communities are tending towards slum. They have not become slums. So we should work at reducing the number of slums that we have so that we can have more habitable communities.
All right. From our conversation with Dr. Moses Ogunleye this morning, obviously we still have a lot to do as a society in tackling the problem of housing, especially on the part of government, creating the right atmosphere and policies for the private sector player to come in and assist government in tackling this problem. We thank you very much. Dr. Moses Ogunleye, Managing Director, MOA Planners Limited, is equally a professional town planner. We thank you for your time.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll take a very quick break. When we come back, Joy will be taking us through our conversation on the show. Do stay with us.